Samson, you just tweeted something where you're like, looking at all these different indicators that are really close to all-time highs or that just trending upwards. Like it's up on the screen now with the hash rates near all-time highs, debt to GDP ratios. What were you kind of meaning by this tweet? I'd be curious, and then break down some of the things that you listed here.
Yeah, so I was chatting with somebody, or someone commented on my post, and he's saying, what are I think I said all indicators are pointing in a very bullish direction, and he asked what indicators. So I just broke it down for him and wrote down all those different things. But this is really what I look at when I'm trying to figure out where Bitcoin is going. And all of those things are going up. Hash rate is going through the roof. And I think you guys are contributing to some of that, right? With your new
Swan
mining, right? So it's your fault too. But the 200-week moving average, people kind of forget that. But it takes like a 10 sigma event to break the 200-week moving average, right? It's very uncommon that we dip below that. And that's trending upwards steadily. I think it's at 30 something now. But you have some crypto analysts saying, well, we're going to go to 20K. But that's far below 200-week moving average. So it would take some massive scandal FTX level times 3 to push us down there. And I don't think that's possible at this point. Basically, every indicator is signaling that people need to move out of fiat into Bitcoin, right? Like the debt GDP ratios, it's going up. The money printing is going up. The money supply is increasing. All of this stuff is increasing at the same time that Bitcoin is becoming more robust, more resilient, and we're getting the halving in less than 3 months now. So it's setting up for a very bullish takeoff of Bitcoin. And I think this is what's going to trigger that Omega candle that I've been talking about. But you've also been doing a lot of analysis as well. I think you posted about the ETF. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
Well, I think they're a big deal. I think they're just going to take time for, the people who they're really meant for, I guess, or like the financial advisors, pension funds, endowments, some of these big institutional investors. It's going to take time for them to even wrap their heads around Bitcoin. But now you have these large financial firms who are, inadvertently, I would say, advertising for Bitcoin itself, but they're just trying to make money off their ETF products. But it's just going to get more and more of these people who manage trillions and trillions of dollars more knowledgeable about Bitcoin. And then I just think about that graph where the more knowledgeable you become, the greater percent of your net worth you put into Bitcoin. And so I think that's going to happen on a different level than we've seen in previous cycles. And these ETFs are just this new top of funnel. So I do think they're a really big deal long term. I think short term, we're just seeing a lot of volatility. I think already you had spot market depth pretty low after the FTX collapse and all the contagion. There just isn't that much Bitcoin. So you should expect a lot of volatility, especially if more demand comes up. And that's going to probably go both ways. But over the long term, that trend is clear. And I think it's going to be a big wave. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, that's just my thoughts on the ETFs. I just think they're really bullish. But of course, like real spot Bitcoin, I think, as a community, we have to get people to understand why Bitcoin itself is important to hold and why there's different trade-offs for an ETF, like giving up, your sovereignty and having somebody else hold the Bitcoin for you. Like we can go through it again. There's no fees with holding spot Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada. And building tools as a community, like, Aqua Wallet is one perfect example, like tools where people can easily self-custody, make it more functional, make it better UX, UI. I think that's really important.
Well, I think ETFs go after a different market. I'm sure there are some high net worth Bitcoiners that are possibly divesting into it so they can leverage in the TradFi system, because now you can borrow against it easily, right? If it's a ETF 100%. Product. I think it's also for estate planning, because if it's sitting in the ETF, then it's easier it's minimizing some risk of single point of failure if something happens to get hit by a bust or whatever. So possibly we're seeing that kind of diversification happen with Bitcoiners, but by and large, the ETFs are marketed towards boomers, pension funds, institutions, even other companies to hold. And I think that has yet to really hit the market. Once we see the pension fund money trickling into the ETFs, and they take time to decide, right? But that simple act of pensions buying Bitcoin is going to trigger this massive supply shock and demand surge. And it's going to happen very rapidly, because the there's this sort of a weird thing. Maybe you can call it, maybe it is the Veblen effect. But as the thing becomes more valuable, the more people want it. But it's gonna the pension funds coming in is going to drive the price up, and that's going to signal to other pension funds. So I don't know if it's a Veblen signal or what, but there's got to be some new terminology that we create here. But as the Bitcoin price goes up, more and more people are going to start looking at this. And then you have this sort of threshold at which we cross gold market cap, which indicates to the world that this is the new gold. And I've called that the Veblen threshold. But that's sort of an anchoring point at which you don't want gold anymore. This is gold, and you need gold, and that puts us on the same footing as the demand for gold for nation states, because their treasuries are still accumulating gold. A lot of countries like China are rapidly trying to get gold and buy a lot of gold. So now they need to look at Bitcoin.
Yeah, central bank purchasing of gold is hitting records like for the last couple of years, every year. And I just saw something about China actually, where their stock market's in trouble right now. It's been crashing. The real estate prices have been crashing, and they're actually turning to gold and even Bitcoin. There's more demand and peer-to-peer trading happening compared to previous year. It's a huge jump up in trading volume in Bitcoin, just peer-to-peer transaction volume, which is really interesting because they're like turning to hard money alternatives as their traditional stores of value, which is stocks and real estate, are collapsing on them.
Yeah, but the best indicator for China is really to look at Hong Kong, and you're seeing like 3, maybe 4 now, spot ETFs being produced and going to market soon, and that essentially is allowing mainland Chinese money to access Bitcoin in legitimate institutional product. So the tides are really turning, and Bitcoin is becoming that reserve asset of the world. The question is when it happens, and I think when that happens, it's going to be explosive. It's not going to be this slow, gradual, plodding trek upwards. It's going to happen as a step function where we just go up very rapidly to 100, and then from 100 you go very rapidly again to 500, and so on.
Well, I think the animal spirits take over too when you cross those like psychological levels, like 100,000. I think it's going to get kind of stupid in terms of the mainstream media coverage, and it's going to be everywhere, right?
I just watched the GameStop documentary on Netflix like a couple of days ago because it was like the anniversary, and I never really got into that. But it's funny, like looking at what happened there, and the fact that you could stop trading and crush the whole movement. That just can't happen with Bitcoin. There can be no removal of the buy button. So, and there's no one to call up and blame because it's decentralized. So it just, I think you can just see what happens. Imagine GameStop without the removal of the buy button and without any funny business from Robinhood or Citadel.
Yeah, because they just halted trading, right? They just halted trading at GameStop. Robinhood just removed the buy button.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Corey, if you're listening, you better not remove the buy button on Swan, or else we're gonna come after you.
Well, there's no sell button, so. I wanted to touch. One of the metrics that you had on that tweet. I don't know if Jacob, you could throw that back up real quick. Is Tether USDT AUM? Now they just had an announcement today. I mean, Tether's just like they brought in like $6 billion in profits in 2023, which is absurd. Like it puts it in like top 200 profitable countries in the world or something like that. Companies. It's just wild. But one of the things like you can't really argue is that stablecoin adoption is huge across the world. And I'm wondering, Andre, like is stablecoins popular in Madeira at all? And do you see it as like people
not as much, not as much as and Samson is way more knowledgeable about this than me. I think there are a lot in demand in the more, I don't like the word, but underdeveloped countries like Venezuela and Argentina and so on, and Africa, all of Africa, because the dollar is very, very appreciated over there, of course, because even with all the troubles, it's much more stable than their own, shitty coins, fiat coins that they have there. Just we have, for example, the country that I have more relationships with is Venezuela, because we have a large Madeiran community there. And I am collecting bills, actually. Charlie, that works for Fimadad, has been giving me
Like
these little
hyperinflated
pieces
bills?
of paper that it's worth nothing.
Bolivars?
Literally. Actually, we're doing a funny thing for the conference with the bills.
Hey, I saw in Venezuela they're making like bags out of the bolivar, right?
That's
I think
utility.
you should contract them to make swag bags
I
for
can
the conference out of the
no,
bolivar.
this was an idea for just for a gift for the attendees. I can say it. Actually, it's gonna be cool. But I asked Charlie because he's from Venezuela, and actually, Charlie has a great story of its own. He's the first official IRA of Primavera. He's a Venezuelan, and he escaped Venezuela with Bitcoin in his head with his mother, which is
Really?
fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing to see. And this is exactly the stories that these privileged people in Europe need to understand, that they don't. They really, really don't. It's most people are like, oh, well, why do you need that? We have, MBWay, which is a local payment provider, whatever. They don't really understand the use cases. They don't. But stable coins are not as used here, of course, as in those other countries, because we have the euro and it's considered more stable and not necessary, I guess, to flee to the dollar as other countries have that need. And I think it's also mixed, and Samson knows it. Of course, it's also mixed with the volatility of Bitcoin. That for people who are not able to use Bitcoin as a reserve, they want to use it for the day to day life needs, right? I think dollar or a stable coin is very, very helpful, of course, in their case. So we don't see it a lot here.
Okay.
Here is more for the reserves and the savings and so on so far. But I would like to say that I think that I own several businesses, and so I have a lot of relations with government and tax authorities and banks and so forth. But today, for the first time in my life, I funded a new company with Bitcoin only on a Bitcoin
Really?
standard. And I can tell you that I'm not a very technical guy, but I think Bitcoin is developing so well that it's actually now very easy to use, not that hard to use. We funded the company. We sat down together. We opened up a new multi-sig wallet. We created all the files. We funded the company. We made our first payment. No paperwork, no one to tell us where did this money come from, who are you paying, and immediately when you realize this, I was leaving I was leaving the place and thinking, Jesus Christ, when you look at the mess that the fiat system and the banking system makes you do to create a new company or to send a payment to the other side of the world, that someone in a branch in the mainland needs to sign and ask you where this money is coming to. They are so sorry, I was gonna say a swear word. They
There
are
you go.
completely trashed, man. It's so much better that it will eventually it's the world, basically.